This next third of your life can be the very best third ever. We need men who reimagine themselves, men who are willing to do the work to reinvent themselves, men who dream again. Welcome to Next Third, Best Third. Hey everybody, welcome to Next Third, Best Third. I'm David Fenwick. I'm the founder and your host. And today I'm with a special guest, my dear friend Stephanie Rounds. Stephanie is an amazing human. She's a Renaissance woman, and I just would like for you to just tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah. Well, where do I start?
Where do you start?
Always a question, right? Well, born and raised in Vegas, so the best question that everybody asks me, what hotel is your dad a bookie at? And you go, no, not a hotel. We live in a house. We live in a house. Born and raised in Vegas. So not a native Texan, but very glad to be here. Moved here with my husband of 16 years. So it's going to be 16 years. And our 4 really amazing kids who are just wild. The 4 of my favorite people next to my husband in my life. And then, but above all, avid believer in Jesus. Love him, my best friend. And anybody that knows me knows that's who I am. And you can't get away from that. But of course, my other huge passions and why I'm here, nutrition and fitness and just being a really holistically whole person. And hopefully by the end of this conversation, we'll be able to get people to think more critically about what they're doing, about their habits, about their lifestyle choices, and realize that it's really not that hard to make really good choices that just turn into a lifestyle.
Right.
So, yeah, it's a little bit about me. And anything else you want to know during the time? Go ahead and ask.
I certainly will. But yeah, as you know, Next Third, Best Third was really started as a niche targeting men. But what we're going to talk about today is going to be great for women, men, whatever. A big part of what we do is we really inspire people and challenge people to live with intentionality.
Right.
And as I've been going on this journey and on this platform, I realize we have to start with nutrition, right?
Yeah.
Because everything comes from what you eat, what you drink, and your exercising.
Right. Because what's that phrase? You are what you eat. Yeah,
that's what I hear, right? So what for you? I know you're a nutritionist, holistic nutritionist.
Yeah.
But if you could just give me a little idea of what your overall philosophy is about nutrition? Because I know there's so many different angles and there's so many different approaches, but yours specifically.
My specific philosophy when it comes to nutrition is that, food is fuel. And there's always that verse in the Bible too that says, taste and see that the Lord is good, right? So yeah, it's fuel for your body. It gives you energy. It gives you that life sustenance. And then also the Lord says, come to me, I'm your daily bread, right? Mm-hmm. Come to me for daily bread. Mm-hmm. So my whole philosophy is that it's a tool, but it's also something for me to enjoy.
Right.
And everything in moderation. Some people like to go way on one side. Some people like to go way on the other. And then there's always that horrible crash on either end if you go one way or the other. So I'm on the philosophy of everything in moderation and just make good choices. Be mindful and in the moment when you eat, when you sit down to have a meal with whoever it may be, whether it's yourself, whether it's your family. Be mindful of what you're doing. Be present. Be in the moment, because we're on such a go mentality now.
Right.
Where everything is fast. Everything is, I need it now. I need it yesterday. I need it. We need to do this. That we've lost the art of being present. We've lost the art of being mindful. So my whole philosophy is be in the present and realize what you're doing and why you're doing it.
That's right.
So that's a basic view of it.
It's kind of like slow down, right? In this fast pace, in this immediate gratification world, slow down. Think things through, have a plan, right? But enjoy yourself along the way. You hear all the time about how diets are not sustainable.
Right.
They are maybe for a short period of time, but sustainability, that's a key, right?
Huge. So you'll learn from me very quickly that I don't do diets. I don't suggest diets. I don't do any of that. We have goals and then we adjust our eating habits accordingly. All these fad diets that have come through and go through cycles, because they may be one name like 10 years ago, and now it's the same exact thing but a different name. So people thinking, oh, I'm doing something new, but you're really not. This has been around forever. But to really, again, be mindful. And what happens is when people hear diet, it's like, oh no, then I'm on such a restriction. And that's not it at all. What it is I switch that. I don't use that term. I use the word lifestyle. I mean, you're going to hear me saying that consistently throughout this whole interview. It's a lifestyle. When you immediately tell somebody diet, what are they going to do? They're going to go, okay, I can do a diet, but then they have a mindset of, well, if I fail, so what's the point? Or I can maintain this restrictive calorie intake for the rest of my life, when really you're putting yourself in such a detrimental place of failure later on, to where you shorten your lifespan because you're not receiving the nutrients that you need. Again, women and men bodies are different. So what a woman in her 30s is going to needs and is still in childbearing years is going to be different than a woman who's in her postpartum or in her premenopausal or postmenopausal years, or even a man who's in his early 20s, high testosterone, doing all the, mostly a lot of boys want to like bodybuild, do all the sports, as opposed to a gentleman who's in their later years, in their 60s, with a different hormonal molecular change in their bodies. So when you look at how you go about your relationship with food, what your plans are, it's a lifestyle.
Right.
And you have to make adjustments along the way. Instead of like, I can't do what I did when I was in my 20s training to be an IFBB pro, to what I'm doing now in my mid to late 30s with 4 really busy kids. Now, I love when people can do that, because that's what they've chosen to do as a career. That's their lifestyle. For me, personally, that doesn't work.
Right.
And I also know a one fit answer isn't going to fit everybody. That's a myth. There's no one fit all. Everybody's different. So
that's so good.
Yeah.
That's so good. I know we're going to do a little more deep dive into some specifics, but one of the things that when I started really looking into nutrition, when I started to really figure out how this all goes together, right, and coincides with our emotional health and our relationships and our cognitive health, the statistics that caught me off guard and blew me away was the real epidemic we have in North America with obesity and type 2 diabetes, right? Yeah. Some of the things that I saw was from 2000 to 2020, the prevalence of obesity rose from 30.5% to nearly 43% of the population. Yeah. Right?
Yep.
I mean, that's crazy. Nearly 70% of the U.S. population is overweight or obese, and that has tripled since 1960.
Yeah.
And then one more is in 2021, it saw nearly 12% of the population in the U.S. has type 2 diabetes.
Yeah.
I mean, this is a severe problem.
It's a big problem. And it's funny that you said North America. It's not just North America. It's worldwide.
Right.
It's a big problem. And a lot of it has to do with socioeconomics. It has to do with modernization, urbanization. And what I mean by that is technology coming in, not anybody's really in farmlands anymore. We're more in an urban type environment where things are closer together. Or if it's further apart, like in America, we're not close like in Europe. Europe, something far away is like an hour, right? All the countries are super small. They can fit within Texas
That's right.
in and of itself. But whereas you might have biked or walked earlier, maybe even like 15, 20 years ago, you can't really do that anymore with how widespread everything is. And so what happens is people become more sedentary. And also with how nutrients aren't as dense in food anymore. Topsoil has been depleted and is getting depleted, and it's a big problem because that's where all the nutrients comes in food. A apple today isn't going to be as nutrient dense as it was back in the 80s and 90s even. So, and I say that funny because when you think about it, I'm like, oh my gosh, we're in 2020s right now. Like we're way far away from the 1980s, which I thought was like 10 years ago. It's not.
No.
It's not. It's almost 40 years ago. Like for me, it's almost 40 years ago. But the problem is that people have become complacent, compliant, lazy. And I know I say that kind of flippantly, but I don't mean lazy as in mentally. I mean lazy as in physically, because now a lot of how we interact with people is online. A lot of how we interact with people is virtually. A lot of our jobs and which is great, right? Because the modernization of social media, of video conferencing, all that stuff, we're able to reach people around the world that never would have had the availability to this information, even like when it comes to the gospel, right? Mm-hmm. Which is the coolest thing that I've ever experienced. But also, the Lord will always use these things for his benefit before the enemy takes it and like thwarts it, right? It's always a gift for us to use to benefit. But because of that, just humans in general, we like to get comfortable and get in routines. And when things are made easy, then you're going to pick just naturally, you're going to pick the easy way over the hard way. Right. That's just how people are built naturally.
Yeah, it's very rare for someone to choose the hard.
Right, you know? Right. And so what happens is you're going to go and grab the easiest, most convenient food and sit on your couch or your chair and work on the laptop, work on your computer, play a video game, do whatever instead of getting up and taking a walk. Again, it lets you not be mindful for when you're eating because you're trying to multitask and do all the things at once. There's a bunch of studies that show that when you're in the middle of a work situation or you're watching TV and you're eating while you're doing something else, you will always overconsume. Always. And you'll eat to being overfull. And the whole purpose of being mindful is taking that time to let your stomach catch up with your brain. Because a lot of time we don't do that. And we can talk about this in a little bit too, is that's why the blue zones in the world, which we can touch on this in a minute, their philosophy is 80%. And what I mean by that is they eat until their stomach is 80% full, which means you will never overeat.
Interesting, yeah.
Right? Mm-hmm. That's an old, I believe, Japanese practice that's like over 2,500 years old. And it's still practiced in a lot of those blue zone areas because they're mindful. Mm-hmm. And a lot of those places are still farmland. You still walk and bike to get where you need to be. They're not as urbanized. They're not as modernized. And so that plays a huge role into type 2 diabetes and obesity because that also brings you around to eating more sugary foods, more empty calories, right? Being, like I said before, sedentary, choosing the more convenient thing over the more nutrient-dense thing that may take time, which there's a way that you can set it up so that way you can grab the healthier thing by setting a day of prep to set you up for the week. But it's a big problem, especially with younger kids, because again, video games, being inside all day, and we've lost the art of being physical and just enjoying nature, enjoying being out in the sun. So, and there's a lot of stuff that can also play into that too. But yes, that's a big reason why.
I love that you're speaking into this and digging into this because it really is holistic, right? Yes. It's not just a caloric intake thing. Right. And I think that's that simple thought. A lot of people says, oh, it's all about calories.
Right.
But it really isn't, right? I mean, and are all calories the same? Right. You know, I for a while there I remember 20 years ago, they said, well, calories are calories, you know? And now they realize that's not true at all, right? Right. Can you speak into that?
Yeah. So it's true and it's not. A calorie is a calorie, but the weight behind it. And what I mean by weight, is it an empty calorie? Right. Or is it going to be nutrient dense? A donut versus an apple. A donut may have more calories than an apple, but the calories that a donut has are going to be not that it's not enjoyable, but it's not going to give you the nutrients that your cells need to thrive. Whereas an apple is going to have extra fiber, extra water, extra micronutrients, vitamins, minerals, all those things that your cells need to thrive. Right. So yes, a calorie is a calorie, but no, there are things as empty calories, what are going to actually give you the sustenance that you need to fulfill those macronutrients, those fats, those carbs, those proteins in a great order that your body needs to thrive. Yeah. So that's a basic answer to it. It's way more complicated than that.
It is. But there's only so deep we can go right now, too. But yeah.
Well, and also like an apple's going to keep you fuller longer than a
Right.
donut. Well, you're going to, when you eat those empty calories, chips, donuts, junk food, whatever have you, candy, all those things, your body gets that insulin spike. It gets that drive, and you're going to consume more in a shorter amount of time and not have that satiety. Satiety, I think that's the word. Can't think of it. Being satisfied.
Right.
Longer than if you have a protein dense meal full of fiber and all those other nutrients your body needs.
I was just reading something the other day that, speaking of the calories, it's really, again, it's not what you're eating necessarily, but it's what the body does with it, right? And that was very interesting to me because it was starting to talk about insulin and storing things for fat and how the body processes. So much of what we intake now, right?
Yeah.
And I call it food-like substances,
Right.
you know, the body doesn't know what to do with it, and the body can't process it because it's not real food.
Right.
Right.
Right. So give me an example of what do you mean by like food-like substances?
Well, I tell the guys that I speak to and challenge all the time that if you can buy it in a convenience store, it's not a food. It's a food-like substance. It's the middle aisle of the grocery store. It's the boxes and bags and things that have so many ingredients. The ingredients you can't pronounce, a lot of X's in there and Z's and things like that. Yeah. That's what I'm talking about. And we know what that.
Polysorbates, colors, all that added stuff.
Right. All that stuff. All that stuff is made to taste real good, but it has no nutritional value or very little.
Right. And there's times and places for that. So for example, when I was training to do IFBB Pro, which for a lot of you that don't know that means where you train your body crazy to do some pretty cool things with it, but it's not a sustained lifestyle. There are times for breaks and everything too. But in order to hit what we would call macronutrients, like your protein intake that you need to build body mass, your fat to give you that, even for women. So women need a higher fat content than men do for hormone balance, for example. Right. A good example is why my balance will look different than yours. Now, does that mean I go out and eat pizza every day? No, absolutely not. There's better ways to get that fat intake. And even carbohydrates, people have this crazy, I don't want to say bad take, but they have this crazy view of carbohydrates as like the bad thing. Don't touch them. They're going to make you fat. They're going to do all these bad things, when really carbohydrates are a big building block of life. They give you the energy that you need to be able to function, for your brain to be able to function. When they're all comboed correctly, you have more energy. You eat less, I guess you could say, with big fluffy bunny ears around it. But your body is getting what it needs to. Your cells are intaking those nutrients that you need to. So going back to what you said for the food-like substances, I will make my own version of protein bars at home to help me hit that higher protein intake that I need for my body to function, because I lift heavy weights at home. I'm a very active person. My caloric intake needs to be higher than what somebody who's sedentary is. It's just my body expends more energy. And for me to hit the goals that I want to hit, like I have a goal of wanting to be able to build bigger body mass, to be able to lift heavier weights, to, at the end of the day, have a more energy and a longer lifespan to be with my kids. It's just my goal. That's what I have. That's why I do what I do. Right. For the most part. How I eat, why I eat, that's my goal, right? Always at the forefront of my mind. Now, will I go and get a protein bar in the grocery store? Yeah. I'm not going to sit here and be like, don't do that. Don't get a protein bar. And then sit here eating my Quest bar while I'm telling you that. Like, no, I'll go and get one, especially if after I hit a really hard gym session and I forget to bring my protein shake, which, again, processed, y'all. But it's a smarter kind. There are ways to research what your body would best intake. Like I do pea protein isolate, which is the pea legume broken down to where it's just like, I don't believe mine has any carbs in it either, where it's just the straight protein for it. So my body absorbs that faster than if I were to eat some steak or something afterwards. Like I just know what my body works with. Right. Would I prefer to eat a steak salad or something afterwards? Absolutely. But time doesn't sometimes Allow
Especially
that.
being a mom with 4 kids.
Right. And not everybody, and I respect that too, right? You
Right.
need to find what works for your lifestyle. Now, if you want to change your lifestyle, we can do a quick, like, let's just redo all of that. Or if you need to make small changes, make small changes. Am I going to tell you to stay away from that? No. If you like those things, okay, and you want to make it work for your diet, yeah, let's not make it a big part of it. Make it like a treat. Like, instead of eating a Snickers, eat a protein bar. Like, there's a different way to approach it. But that's always not the first best thing to go to. How I grocery shop, for example, is I will always go to produce first. I will always go to the outside aisles, right, before I go to the inside aisles. Anything that can go bad if it's not in my refrigerator after like 5 days to a week, that's what I fill up mostly on in my grocery intake. And then I go to the middle aisles of how to support like my carb intake and all that other stuff.
It's interesting, and I do like your approach, saying that don't beat yourself up. You can have treats and things like that. I do the same. I'm very intentional about what I eat, and
I like a good bonbon every now and then.
There you go. Everybody likes that, yeah. But for me, I call it. I want to eat as much real food as possible.
Right.
But most food, or so much food, is processed, right? Being processed isn't a problem. It's the ultra processing, right? I mean, you take tomatoes and you smash them together and put them in a can to make tomato paste. That's a process.
Yeah. Yep.
But it's not what we're talking about when we're talking about ultra process. When you break something down, just totally break it down and then remake it by adding all these other things.
You change the molecular complex of it.
So it's no longer real food.
Right.
It's a food-like substance.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah. And a lot of people, like you said, they take the whole verbiage of processed and they're like, oh, I can't eat anything. I'm like, well, no, take it back a little bit. Can you pronounce most of the stuff on the package? Just like you mentioned earlier. Can we, polysorbate number 40, red dye, like all these things, there have been studies showing that it does affect people and how like their brain functions. Like my kids, I know my kids well enough and people be like, oh no, that doesn't work, whatever. Look, I appreciate where you're coming from. I just know my experience. Like, experience will always trump information.
Yes.
Every time. So I can be sharing all this information, but if your experience doesn't line up with what I'm saying, then by all means, like, it's good to be educated, but what are you going to do with that information? I use it as a tool to come in line with my experience, and a lot of it is trial and error anyway.
Right.
So I can share with you my experience, which is what I'm doing now, but it will never be your experience.
Right.
It may be similar. There may be some instances that are similar, but it will never be identical to mine because we're two totally different people.
It's interesting, and I know as a nutritionist, you understand this, is so many people have different takes, right? And we're going to get into that. I want to get into the paleo and keto and carnivore and all those kind of things, But before that, I want to touch on something about, and I know we can't do a super deep dive, but kind of how food is really digested. I'm learning a lot about the gut biome and gut health and mitochondria. Those were terms I didn't know ever until the last year and a half.
Yeah.
And I know we talked a little bit about this the other day, but speak into that, like how's food digested, and talk about the gut health.
Yeah, absolutely. So they call your gut the second brain, right? And it's fun because there are certain neurons that are in your gut that are linked to your brain. So your immune system is in your gut, like all those things. Serotonin is produced there. That's where a lot of your health resides. Because again, your life, like how are you going to sustain? What are you made of? All the building blocks of life are pretty much the same. So we're consuming to rebuild our blocks, right? So when you say mitochondria, the very center of a cell, like the energy source, where are you getting that? And I always like to think that food is digested first with your eyes, because you're always going to go to what looks the most attractive.
Sure.
Right?
Sure.
So no, are you really digesting food? No, but you're choosing in that moment what you want to consume. And then when you start thinking of something, then you have memories linked to most of the things that we eat. We have memories linked to, and so your saliva starts developing, right? Which is really where your food starts developing. And that's why it's so important, again, mindful, y'all, to be mindful of when you're eating, because your food starts being digested in your mouth. before it even gets down into your stomach.
Yeah, that makes sense.
It does, right? So if you chew on a piece of gum for long enough, it starts getting broken down. Like if it's made with organic type material and not like all the super processed stuff.
Right.
Because I've tried the natural gum and I'm like, look, y'all, I will pick an ultra processed gum over a natural gum any day because that stuff breaks down horribly in my mouth and it's just disgusting. I'm a texture person through and through, and I'm like, this is gross. But it makes you realize, oh, my saliva has so many great compounds in it that is where it breaks down things into sugars, into fats, whatever it's going to happen. It starts the breakdown process. You should be chewing your food anywhere between at least 15 to 30 chews before you swallow it.
You know, I've tried that.
It's
I've
hard.
tried to be mindful. It's really,
so hard.
really hard.
I don't do it. Look, I would be a liar if I said I do that. I don't do that all the time because it's just whatever. I like how this tastes. It's going down. It's how it is. But what studies have shown is the more you take to chew it, the easier it is for your body to absorb it when it gets down into your stomach. Because now with obesity and insulin resistance and all these things, your stomach acid isn't where it should be. And a lot of that comes with medication that's being taken and acids which are being taken because like, oh, my acid's too high in my stomach. Actually, if you're feeling heartburn and stuff, that means your acid is not where it should be. And you should be drinking a little bit of apple cider vinegar or some bitters or some lemon juice before you eat to help stimulate your gastric acid from your gallbladder and your liver and all that stuff. So it starts with your eyes, goes to your olfactory, your senses, and then your saliva starts. And then when you take that bite and you start chewing, that's where it starts being digested.
Oh, I know. Here in Texas, you walk in and you smell that barbecue.
All the barbecue.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
I'm there, right? I mean, I'm thinking about it. I'm dreaming
you
about
and my
it.
husband
I'm
both.
tasting it. Yeah.
I'm like, have fun, y'all. We'll just get a farm and get a cow, and then we'll not name the cow because that's not fun when you decide to make it into barbecue.
You know, we pivot here a little bit.
Yeah.
We started talking about diets and how diets don't really work, and yet in America, diets and diet books and things like that is such a high profit center. I mean, that is one of there's so much money being made, right? On trying to sell people the newest and greatest diet. Yeah. But there's a couple things I want to talk about with you, and it's because I'm really going after this myself. I was exposed to the carnivore, in keto and the whole thing, and I'm just doing my own. I'm basically creating something like I eat a lot of meat. Yeah. A lot of meat. But I'm not exclusive, right? And I'm trying to build into it. So just, I know you know about these. Just talk about kind of the pros and cons, right? A little bit there. Sure.
So there's always going to be pros and cons with whatever you do because, again, everybody's an individual.
Right.
There's pros and cons with intermittent fasting, which is a diet lifestyle. Carnivore, which is purely meat. And if you go hardcore, it's like raw meat, which is a whole other thing. I'm like, oh, boy. There's paleo, which is only, quote unquote, what the caveman might have eaten, which, again, we don't really know what the caveman ate, right? It depends on your train of thought and what you believe, right? But that pretty much means meat, no dairy, no grains, and no processed foods, and very little high carbohydrates. So, like, sweet potato is a hit or miss with certain people on paleo. Like some people are like, yes, you can eat it on paleo and you can eat black beans. And other people are like, no, you can't eat legumes and no, you can't. So, I mean, there's a whole different thing on there. Vegan, no meat products at all. Sometimes people turn that even to like a way of life and a religion almost because they won't wear any leather. They won't do any of that. So if you're a strict vegan, it's not just a diet, it's a lifestyle. Like, and of course all this is a lifestyle, but what I mean by that is you are very strict with even what you put on your body.
That's very intense.
Yeah, it's very intense. Then you have pescatarian, which is only, I believe pescatarian is only fish products along with vegetables and fruits. And then you have where you just eat chicken, vegetables, and fruits. Like there's a whole slew of things. And then there's plant-based, which is like a lot of vegan, but then a little bit of animal products, which I like to think myself as a whole food, I guess you want to say whole food plant-based person. I try to make most of my dish fruit, like vegetables. Like half of my dish will be vegetables. A quarter will be grains, and like a third to a quarter will be protein, right? So that's plant-based, which I think is the most balanced, because your body needs all those things. But the pros to the other extreme ones are, if you have high inflammatory markers in your body, you have autoimmune disease, you have an acute illness, cancer, whatever, because there's so many pesticides in foods, things don't have high nutrients anymore, high stress, which causes high oxidation in your cells, which is a whole other thing. I think those extreme diets, especially with professionals, like, I'm not a dietitian, so I can't give medical advice legally. Am I read enough to know kind of where to go about that? Yeah, I have enough information to be dangerous, but legally, no. And would I do it ethically? No. But if you take all this information that you learn and you take it to a trusted medical professional, I do a lot of things holistically, but I do know there's a time and place for medicine, and I'm here for it.
Right.
I grew up in a Western medicine house. My mother she's been a nurse for over 40 plus years, now entrepreneur. Like, I grew up with that. So I'm always fascinated with it. But I also know that our bodies are beautiful and super smart and are made perfectly. Like, the Lord knew what he was doing when he made us, right? So those diets, in an extreme sense, when you have high, like I said before, high inflammation marks, I believe they can help your body go out of fight and flight mode. I believe they can help your body go out of those inflammatory marks and bring them down to a place of healing. Mm-hmm. And when you're in that place of healing, then you're able to heal your gut. Like, leaky gut is a huge thing, right, that is between your microbiome. That means, like, there's little itty bitty holes that let your nutrients come in and out of your gut wall that shouldn't be. So that gives you even more. It can even give you, like, a sense of autoimmune disease, because your body's going, oh, these things are in my blood. What is this? Like, this isn't supposed to be here. And a lot of that has to do, again, with stress, with being acutely sick, chronically sick. I think medicine, like, all the things. Mm-hmm. So you really just have to look, again, holistically at your lifestyle. What is it here that could be? What is the root cause? What could have put me into this flight or fight state? So yes, I do believe that there's a time and place, and there's so many pros and cons for each of them that if I even were to hit on any of them, it's going to be debated, sure, no matter what I say.
Well, that's a big thing I've seen.
And I love it.
You know, as I've been, just devouring all this, someone who's pro one side, and all, this all I believe is, and then you go.
But it may seem like I'm skirting the issue, but it's just so much for me to be. I've been on a paleo diet. Sure. I've done that. I know what my body responds to enough now to know how I eat. If I eat too many grains, my body tends to go into inflammatory. That means my gut is still not fully healed and where it needs to be. I've been off gluten for a very long time because of being diagnosed with hypothyroidism and Hashimoto's after having my kids, and, like, all these different things. So this has been a journey for me to even figure out which one works for me and which one is a viable, sustainable lifestyle. Now, for me to hit, I tried vegan. It actually made me worse. So veganism for me, and I did it as well as I thought I could, it actually made me worse anemic wise, all these vitamins, even though I was taking vitamins and supplements to help fix those holes, because when you go to an extreme diet, you're not going to get the actual, all the nutrients you're going to need. You're going to have to supplement with supplements, which is also a huge whole other ball game, right? And my whole view on that is, it's just that it's a supplement. It's not supposed to take over your diet. And if you need a supplement consistently, there's a deeper problem. Now, it's okay, because I supplement with vitamin D consistently and some other things, because I don't get out in the sun as much as I really want to, or I don't get it enough in my foods, or whatever the case may be. All that to say, if you have an illness, if you have a extreme stress situation, if there's something going on with your body and you need to do elimination, you need to try one of those diets, get in contact with a dietitian, get in contact with a medical professional who can help guide you, who is willing to work with you and not tell you, oh no, Mr. Google isn't your best friend, but will actually be there to be your partner. Right. And you can advocate for yourself. This is a huge thing. it's kind of going on a bunny trail, but this is a huge thing that I'm a big proponent for, is advocate for yourself. If that doctor isn't willing to even listen to you and they're trying to gaslight you and say, no, you're wrong. Like, I know what I'm doing. Like, Dr. Google is not your best friend. Do you have a certificate? Do you have a doctorate? Like, if they're not willing to even listen to you and maybe walk you through or be like, how can I help you? Fire that person and go see another person. But don't just stop because somebody told you something that if it didn't give you peace and you're not walking forward with it, then find somebody else. But don't just hop on a bandwagon because it's fad. You're going to hurt yourself more in the long run than you are going to help yourself.
Yeah, that's so good. And, when we started Next Third, Best Third, it's really, we recognize 5 areas of decay, right? And we're trying to fight against decay.
Right.
And it's cognitive decay, right? Emotional decay, physical decay, relationships, and then what I call spiritual decay.
Right.
And what we propose all the time is to examine your life, right? An examined life is a life worth living, you know. And as we're trying to make our next third our best third, you have to examine your life and you have to be intentional.
Yeah.
But there isn't a quick fix.
Right.
It's very holistic, right? And so I love your approach to this. And, you touched on something because everybody's different, right? And because everybody's at a different place in their life, and they have different needs, there's different things that maybe you should be doing and shouldn't be doing that are absolutes, right? You mentioned intermittent fasting. And I just want to touch on that because as I've been reading about intermittent fasting, for me, what I decided to do was I do intermittent fasting, but I do it by purposely eating my last meal by no later than 7 o'clock at night.
Yeah.
And like, here it is, it's noon and I haven't eaten.
Right.
So like, I put off my first meal till later in the morning. Normally I would have eaten by now.
Right. Yeah.
But I end up getting about 14 to 16 hours every day of fasting period. Now, that's a good thing.
It can be, because what happens now in the modern age is that we are on, again, a go moment, right? And this, again, goes back to the whole being mindful. We're eating all day, every day. Mostly everybody's eating all day, every day. Or you're like me, and you're a busy mom, and you're like, crap, it's 3 PM. I haven't eaten anything all day. This is why I'm so angry and mean. Like,
you get the hangry.
You get it gets past hangry.
Yeah.
You don't want to be around me. It's not nice. I feel so sorry for my kids sometimes. I'm like, I'm so sorry. But intermittent fasting can be, let's go back a little bit. There's fasting in biblical reasons too, right?
Right.
The Lord doesn't suggest that we implement these things to harm us. There's so much good spiritually and physically that comes from these things. I practice fasting at least once a week. And what I mean by that is I fast 24 hours and I give my body a break from everything for 24 hours. I don't just do that for a physical reason. I do it for a spiritual reason. There's so much breakthrough that comes through with fasting. That's a whole other thing that I can get on a soapbox with, and what I'm super passionate about. Fasting and communion, 2 very passionate things I am about. But to bring it back to your point, intermittent fasting can be a very great tool, especially for people who are dealing with acute illness, for people who are dealing with overweight and overeating. Giving your body a break is a great thing. We don't drink enough water.
Right.
We just don't. We don't drink enough of the right water. You can be drinking enough water and then still be thirsty in like 2 minutes. It doesn't mean that you have diabetes, but it just means that your cell isn't absorbing what it should be absorbing because it doesn't have the right nutrients in the water. The water could be totally stripped. It doesn't have the right mineral content in it. So your body's not actually being hydrated. So that's a whole other really cool scientific thing to get into. For example, when I wake up, the first thing I drink is warm lemon water with a pinch of pink Himalayan sea salt. And that helps my cells absorb everything that was dehydrated from me overnight. Because you're not drinking in the middle of the night. If you are, then there might be some other things going on, or it's just a habit that you've created. But generally speaking, with the most of the population, you're dehydrated when you wake up. You haven't been sleeping. You haven't been drinking for 10 hours, like however long. If you sleep for 10 hours, God bless you. Let me know what that's like. But
I'm going to do a whole nother podcast on sleep alone,
sleep.
right? Sleep
Yes.
is such a key.
It's so key.
Yeah.
And some people need more than others.
Right.
Little tangent, but that's my take on fasting. Now, if you have, again, a bad relationship with food, I got delivered from anorexia. That's another reason why I'm so passionate about nutrition and about being healthy holistically. The Lord literally delivered me from anorexia. In my form of anorexia, where I would measure everything out to the teaspoon to know exactly the calorie count and then I'd go running for miles. And
that was back when you were training.
No. It was back when I was in college.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Really traumatic stuff happening in my past that the only thing I could control was what I ate. So I felt like everything else was spinning out of control. So this is the only thing I could control.
Wow.
So, and I would love to be able to share that and give my testimony on that sometime, because that's really freeing. But the Lord totally delivered me from anorexia and healed me from that. So, but I know what my triggers are. I know that I catch myself, because when you're tempted, it doesn't mean it always goes away, right?
Right.
So although I was delivered from that, I know the Lord gives me the power to be able to overcome that. So I do know sometimes that fasting can be a trigger for me to just be like, oh, this will help my body, whatever. So your mindset has to be really focused on, what's the goal of this?
Right.
Why am I doing this? And so it really does end up helping if you do it in a healthy way. If you do it most people don't do it in a professionally supervised way. They just, I'll just try it, do whatever. Be smart. If I can just tell anybody, just be smart. Be smart with your choices. If you know that you have some mental illness, or you know that you're not healthy, or you tend to go on it, and don't jump into something like that. Get help.
Right.
Get help.
And I think that's a big thing, a big issue, right? Is there's so much information online. There's so much that's at our fingertips that we can make that real serious mistake of jumping into something.
Yeah.
Training. I'm in the gym 5 days a week, right?
Look.
And but I see so many people doing it wrong.
Yeah.
And it's same thing with nutrition. People in diets. That's where diets get dangerous. Is someone just jumps into it without a professional, who can really walk them through.
Yeah.
Real quick, I wanted to touch on a few key elements in nutrition, and I'm just going to kind of go down bullet. You just give me a quick hit on each of these, okay? Sure. So the first one we touched on a little bit, but protein. The different types, and how much do we need? Yeah,
so protein, there's plant and animal protein. Plant, again, is mainly what you're going to get with vegan and like legumes. Great source of protein when it comes to the vegan-based. And usually they're not complete source of protein. So amino acids is what proteins are built out of, right? And there's a certain number that are complete in animal products. So whenever you eat an animal muscle, which is pretty much what animal protein is, you're getting the full amino acid that your body needs to rebuild its cells. Your blood comes from all that. It's the building block of life is protein. That's your main thing. We don't get enough protein in our diet.
Yeah, you don't store protein. It's used to build.
Yes, it's used to build. So it's being wasted, like dumped off, like the waste is being circulated through your body. And like, if you have a good circulatory system, like it's all getting out through your lymph system, through your organs, all of the things. So it's not something that is really stored. You're getting rid of it. Much like water. You need water consistently. So again, we're not all getting enough protein. I know I don't get enough protein. That's a really difficult one for me to hit. Yeah.
Is it harder, I would imagine, to get enough protein if you're just plant-based?
Yes, it's very, very difficult because then you're also getting an abundance of all the other macronutrients too, unless you're getting food type substances. So a lot of protein powders, a lot of protein bars, or how you're able to hit it, at least from what I've experienced. Now, I know there's some vegan athletes that are phenomenal and they have it, but it's a different way of consuming it. You need to make sure you're getting all the amino acids.
And they're really professionals at it.
Yes, they are.
I mean, for the average guy or woman, it's going to be hard.
It's a whole other job. It really, really is. Because for me, I had to be so mindful about it. It like consumed everything I was doing. So those are the two main ones. And you can get a full amino acid profile by eating a legume and a grain together. Yeah. Quinoa has the highest protein in grains, and so you pair that with like a pea, and you're getting a really good protein source. Yeah. Of course, eating regular protein like veal.
Right.
That's great. Chicken is always the best one, but hormone producing, that's a whole other story.
I just read
Sardines, they're great protein.
Sardines are great for protein.
They're one of my favorites.
Yeah. I just read that the amount of protein that we really need is much higher than we've thought in the past, right? So I heard it's like, I'm 185 pounds and I should be taking in about 140 grams of protein.
At least that. They say like a gram of protein per your weight that you want to be. So for me, say I wanted to be 125 pounds lean, but I need to build muscle to do a show, I would have to eat way more, like 145 grams of protein a day, which is a lot.
That's a lot of protein.
For a little person. I'm like, what, 5'6", and I don't mind sharing with you how much I weigh. I'm about like, what, 135, 5'6", so I'm petite. But it takes a whole mindset to really be, again, mindful of what you're consuming.
And it's hard to eat a lot of protein because it satiates, right? I mean, you don't overeat on protein. You eat protein, then you get full.
Yeah.
Where, someone could eat an entire bag of Oreos because it doesn't have any kind of satiation, right? Or satiate.
Yeah.
And, but protein, you eat your steak and you're done.
Yeah. Well, and that's the other thing too, is that that's not going to give you all the other macronutrients that your body needs to survive and thrive.
Right.
So there's not just protein. You want to get your fats and your carbs too.
Absolutely right.
So those are super important to get.
Okay, so we touched on protein. Here's a big one: organic labeling.
Yes.
There's so much out there called organic, and I know this is going to go really off the rails, but
I'll keep it short.
Yeah, keep it short. But speak to organic.
So organic in its form, technically, all food we eat that comes from the ground is organic because it's not man-made. Right. But the label itself is no pesticides. It's not supposed to have any chemical reactions. It's just totally as natural as you can get. Unfortunately, that's not always the case.
Right.
So how I look at it is, again, I look at the list of the clean 15 and the dirty dozen, which is very easily found online. And it can get very expensive to buy organic stuff. Like that's a whole other racket and market in and of itself. So budget-wise, do what you can with what you can.
Right.
And then just make better choices from that alone. Now, like I said, I use those two lists to really help me get what works best for me and my family and our budget. So
you have to be practical still.
Yeah, you do.
Yeah.
Would I want to buy fully organic all the time? Yeah, absolutely. But at the same time, I know what works and what doesn't work for my family style. Plus, with the rate of food prices going as crazy as they are, and if you're not homesteading and getting your own food, it's just astronomical.
Right.
Yeah.
So we were talking about gut health, and I eat, like I said, a lot of protein. I eat a lot of fats.
Yes.
Avocado is one of my favorite things. I eat legumes, a lot of fruit, but my fruit's specific, right?
Sure.
But what I found myself not eating enough of was fiber.
Yes.
Talk to us about fiber and gut health.
Super important. So fiber, even for women, it's really difficult for us to get enough fiber. And there's simple ways that you can actually increase it and not just doing Metamucil, because we all know that's everybody's favorite friend, said sarcastically. Fiber, what it does is it binds. It's a binder, right, that moves things along. So that way it doesn't get stuck and sticky within the walls, which is exactly what you want. Because what it also does is it helps move out all that waste product, all that the dead cells, all the extra hormones. So like for women, because I'm a woman, so I know mostly about this, and I talk mostly about this, is that an excess of estrogen in your system, in your gut, fiber moves it out. So it doesn't help you. It can help you to not lead you into a possibility of having cancer or whatever have you, or an estrogen dominance, which throws your hormones into a whole other thing. So we don't get enough of that because of processed food. And people, again, don't eat enough plants in their diet. Back in the day, you would get it mostly from wheat, which was stone ground, and it still had the hull on it and everything. Oats, which were like stone ground and didn't have it all super processed into quick oats or any of that, takes all the hull and stuff off of it, which is the non-soluble, which means it's not easily dissolved in water.
Right.
Fiber, which will suck up the water and take things out. So helps you get all the waste product out and helps you have really great bowel movements, which if you know of any of my friends, they'll always know, sorry y'all, that poop follows me wherever I go, that'll always be something that I talk to you about.
Right.
Is because it tells you a lot about your gut.
Right.
Like, what does it look like? What does it smell like? Are you having really good ones? Is it every day? Like all those things. So that tells you a lot of where your gut is at without having to do in-depth studies.
Yeah.
So fiber is a big one. You can get that by adding in flax seeds, adding in chia seeds, adding in more fruits, vegetables, stringy stuff, celery,
Right.
apples, eating the skin with the apples, like all that kind of stuff. Yeah.
So far, this has just been so much fun.
Yeah.
We're going to have to get you back here, right?
Yeah.
Because I want so much more I want to talk to you about, and we're just kind of hitting on things. But
Yeah.
two things I definitely wanted to do before you leave is I wanted you to talk about so you know, someone who says I want to get intentional, right?
Yes.
I'm going to be intentional and I'm going to change my lifestyle.
Yeah.
What would be 3 to 5 foods that you would say absolutely should be added to your diet?
Yeah, absolutely should be added.
Because so much, you know, I found is if all you do is restrict, that's no fun and that's hard to do. So I always think, what can you add to first before we get to restrict? But what can you add? What would you say would be 3, 4, 5 foods?
Well, the one thing which isn't a food is water. Start your day with water.
Okay.
If you're used to starting your day with coffee, which a lot of people are, it's not giving you the hydration that your body needs to remove all that waste that's just been sitting there.
Yeah.
A little bit of lemon helps stimulate all those juices. A little pinch of salt helps rehydrate your cells. Drink that in a really big tall glass of warm water. Do that. That's my number one thing.
Okay.
Really easy. Like put it on the nightstand next to you before you even get out of bed. There's your water right there. Like I do that. I have a big, huge like mason jar of water right next to my bed.
You got a room temperature glass of water to start your day.
Yep. And I put like the salt and stuff in it the night before with my lemon juice, and then it just dissolves overnight anyway, and I just drink it.
Yeah.
That's my number one. Okay. My number two, flax seeds.
Okay.
I love flax seeds. And why is because it gives you a really great fiber. It ups your fiber really easily. So I guess I would put flax seeds and chia seeds together because they can kind of interchange. Both really great omega-3 fatty acids. Also gives you 6 and 9, which you don't really need as much as, but they give you great omegas, and they're great non-soluble fiber. So helps build your brain function, all that fun stuff, your heart function, and helps remove all the nasty waste. So those are my two big ones, especially when you have kids too. You can just throw those little flax seeds in with their peanut butter and jelly and they won't know the difference. I do that, moms.
You sneak it in
a little sneak attack. So those are the 2, 3-ish main ones. But the other one I would say, and this I guess would be kind of controversial, is treat yourself. Put a little treat day in there. And I know it's not food, but if you're making a lifestyle, choose one day where you're like, oh, this is my treat day.
Okay.
And just give yourself grace.
That's awesome.
Lots and lots of grace. So yeah. Or the other thing too, now that I think about it, replace a junk food with a piece of fruit or a vegetable.
Okay.
So, and I don't mean like all of it, but if you're going to go grab a bag of chips, try some air fried chickpeas that are flavored however you might want to flavor them, or grab some hummus and carrots or whatever may be easier. Just make it I'm going to make a conscious decision. Instead of grabbing one thing of junk food today, I'm going to grab an extra fruit or an extra vegetable.
Okay.
Right. So that's just one way to start.
So a couple things that I would throw in there. I'm not the nutritionist, but I found you mentioned apple cider vinegar. Yeah. Vinegars in general, right, are great. So in the morning I get up, I have a glass of water, right? And then as I'm brewing my coffee, then I do a second glass of water where I put apple cider vinegar in it. So I have 2 glasses of water before I do anything.
Yes.
So that's a big one.
Good.
And another one, I don't know if you've ever done this, but olive oil. Yeah. I've started to, I get this high polyphenol olive oil that's Moroccan cold pressed, and I drink a shot of it every night. Yep. It's great. Yep. So those are 2 things.
That'll help clean you out too.
Yeah. So okay, on the other side, what are 3 or to 5 things that you I mean, just absolutely would say get out of your diet right away.
Dyes. All fake artificial dyes. Get them out. They're not good for you. They just make things look pretty, and they actually, if you think about it, they taste horrible. Like, think of Peeps. I'm sorry, guys, for all of you that like Peeps, but there's that specific chemical taste that is on top of like that marshmallow. It's just disgusting, and they don't promote any help at all. And I would get rid of, not that we have to really worry about it anymore, but anything that may have trans fat in it. That was, again...
That is not as popular.
Not as popular anymore, but margarine, sorry guys. Yeah. Margarine's a big one. That's a big trans fatty one. Don't do that. I'd opt for ghee, or I'd opt for straight up butter.
Sure.
I'd rather do that. But those are two big ones that I'm just like, don't do. That's a big no-no. Everything else you can kind of work around. I wouldn't say get rid of all fried foods, get all of that stuff. I mean, you got to enjoy yourself.
Sure.
Eventually, I mean, not eventually, but you got to enjoy yourself every once in a while. But for sure, any artificial anything, and what I mean by artificial, I mean like dyes, additives, like PEGs, like any of that stuff, get it out. That's a whole other story in and of itself. It can make oxidative stress worse. It can create a whole bunch of like cancers, like all these things. It's just not good. It's even been banned in Europe, but yet we still allow it here. Don't do it. And then margarine, get it out.
Yeah.
It's not going to do anything. It may taste good and maybe what you're used to growing up on. And I'm probably making a lot of like older generation people angry, but all my grandparents are passed now. So I can say this without my Czechoslovakian grandmother getting really angry at me. So don't do it. It's not going to help you. There are better tasting things that create, I mean, if Crisco makes a really crispy pie crust, so people are going to use it for that, but I think I could make one that tastes just as good with butter. So, yeah.
Yeah, but see, butter's real food. That other is food-like substance, right?
No.
So, a couple things that I tell people. Number one for me, to get out of your diet immediately is sodas.
Yes.
Both sugared sodas, and worse is the diet sodas.
Artificial.
The artificial sweeteners just destroy your gut. Just destroy it. And people say, well, I'm only drinking Diet Cokes. Stop the Diet Cokes first and foremost, right? Yeah. It's all those artificial sweeteners.
Yeah, it's bad.
That's real bad.
Yeah.
And then, of course, I say anything that's that you could find in a convenience store, try to really cut back on that. And then the other one is, again, it's tough, but it's real, is just refined sugar.
Yes. That one, because it's just as addictive as cocaine.
Yeah.
If not more so. Because it rewires your brain chemistry. And that one is a tough one. So I don't usually throw that one in first.
Right.
Only because I know how tough it can be. Now, if you're ready and you're able to go cold turkey, then absolutely do it. And when you do cut out that stuff, you're able to redo your taste buds. A lot of people think, oh, it's not going to taste the same. No, it won't. But your mind and your gut and your taste buds will change.
Right.
They will change. But that is a very hard one, because it is one, if not the most addictive thing next to cocaine that your body will consume. And
there's so much added sugars in the foods that we're eating, especially all those ultra-processed foods. That's the thing that really, once I started reading labels and looking and seeing how much sugar was in the food that I was eating, that blew my mind, right? That scared me, because I'm thinking, man, it's hard to avoid.
Yeah, and again, that goes with insulin resistance.
Right.
Really quick, if you're going to eat in the morning, which some people do, some people don't, make it be a protein-heavy meal. Right. You don't want to wake up and eat cereal, pancakes, whatever. No. And you can. I mean, that's what we grew up with. But you want to throw in a really good, like, couple eggs, maybe some cottage cheese, whatever you do, to help make it so you don't have that insulin spike.
Right.
And there are ways that you can eat that'll help satiate that insulin spike that we can go into another time too. But you want to eat a protein-heavy meal, because it'll set your metabolism up for success for the rest of the day.
Yeah. Yeah, when I mentioned earlier that I don't eat in the morning until late in the morning, I do try to eat twice a day, 2 meals a day, but I consume a lot of calories. I eat a lot because I'm in the gym so much.
Yeah, same.
Right. So I mean, I'm eating a lot of food, but one of the tricks that I found is to start whatever you have, eat the protein first. If you eat the protein first, your appetite gets kind of cut back, and then you eat your vegetables and whatever else. And that's a great trick for somebody who's really struggling with their weight, right? Eat the protein first, and you'll find you're not as hungry.
Yeah. And lean protein is going to help you lose that fat anyway.
Right.
Because again, your muscles are going to absorb that and your cells aren't storing all the fat from the carbs and the fats that you're eating.
So we're gonna end here in just a second, but just kind of get your thought on this. I love your holistic approach, right? I love that whole thing. 15 years ago when I really started on my journey, right? And I was training and running marathons and swimming. I wanted to be a triathlete, but I didn't like the bike.
God bless you.
I didn't like the bike. So I did the other two, but I didn't like the bike.
Yeah.
But I found a book that was called Younger Next Year. And what I loved about it was it wasn't setting me up for failure, saying, oh, you're going to get in shape in 2 weeks,
Sure.
you're going to drop this kind of weight. It was that if you start changing your life now, you can actually become younger
Sure.
a year from now, which is a mind-blowing thing because we have this idea that, you just kind of get old and die.
Right.
But if you do the changes, if you're intentional, you can actually change your age somewhat, right?
Yeah. So a lot of what we talk about in cell health, right, with nutrition and everything, let me put this back a little bit. Collagen is one of the most abundantly produced proteins, but yet when you turn 30, your body stops producing it. So it's actually something that we have to consume for us to be able to have better joint health, better skin health, better hair health, and all that. That's one of the things that I have in my diet consistently. I take collagen at least once a day. And I thought it was a joke when I got older and I stopped taking it for a minute. And I'm like, oh no, I can really feel a difference.
And that's both for men and women.
Men and women. Your body stopped producing it after, I think it's like your 30s, or starts producing it less. But because if you look back with the people in the blue zones, they're active. They walk everywhere. They bike everywhere. They're out in nature. They're not around technology all day long. Like their cells aren't getting bombarded with all these EMF waves, like all these different things. So being active, being out, like generally speaking, when you're active and you're exercising, becoming a triathlete, you're outside anyway, right? You're getting fresh air, you're getting sunlight, your body's regenerating and rejuvenating. So in a sense, yeah, you're getting younger. You can get stronger as you get older. You can get more flexible if you do the right work instead of just sitting around on your butt not doing anything. So yeah, I think it's beautiful.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's great. Well, next time you come back, I want to talk more about lifestyle, blue zones, exercise, right?
Yeah.
Because I know that you're all about that.
So excited about that stuff.
Yeah, so we'll get you back
It's super
here.
fascinating.
Yeah, I know it's hard for you to get a schedule, to come see me. But
we'll make it work.
Come see us. So thanks so much for being here.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you all. So this is Next Third, Best Third. And if you do me a favor, if you'd subscribe, hit the like button. We're going to put links in the bottom, how maybe to get hold of you.
Yeah, absolutely.
And if you had questions. And again, thanks so much for joining us.